Aloha, Pastor Wesley here, and I wanted to give a short introduction regarding our California Pacific Annual Conference of the United Methodist Church, which is our main regional body that we're part of in the larger United Methodist Church. Our annual conference usually holds its in-person gathering in the middle of June on the campus of the University of Redlands in Redlands, California, but because of the current situation with COVID-19, that did not happen, but we met via Zoom webinar. And so I attended as the pastor, and also attended from our church was Michelle Kilikauskas and Laura Lay Miller. They are technically known as our lay members from our local church. All those who attend are lay members or pastors, pastoral members. And so they attended watching on Zoom, and here in a little bit they'll each speak about their experience and the highlights that meant something to them. So it was interesting to do business and to hear reports and to vote on conference action via Zoom. It provided a bit of relaxing in the sense if I could do it here at the church office and not have the travel. I personally missed the opportunity to meet some of my clergy friends, and one thing in particular was the memorial service, which there was a part for that, but also the ordination service. And having friends that I knew being ordained this year, not being able to be there, was a little sad for me. The ordination service still happened. It was held at Pasadena First UMC with social distancing for a few people. And you can see this via video clips on our Cal-Pac website. So besides the usual business, one of the things that's been going on with regards to human sexuality that has sort of been postponed because of COVID, because our general conference was supposed to be held in May of this year, but it's been postponed to August of 2021. And it's the general conference that in many ways our annual conference and all annual conferences are waiting on to come down and make some decisions officially speaking for our United Methodist Church denomination. So there was not any official positions taken because we're just one annual conference. As Michelle will explain in a little more detail, there were some reports given on that, and you can see those as well. So hopefully next year we will be together in person in Redlands, and we will all get to worship, sing, and fellowship and enjoy that time as well. So enjoy these reports from Michelle and Laura. Thank you.
Hello, siblings in Christ. I am one of the delegates to annual conference for the Ridgecrest United Methodist Church. My name is Laura Miller. I have attended this church for a while. Let's just say I remember when we didn't have 3 buildings. We didn't have 2 buildings. In fact, we only had 1 building, and everything came out of it. Anyway, but that's neither here nor there. I wanted to share with you my impressions of annual conference. This year, annual conference was done by a Zoom webinar. And a lot of you have had a lot of experience with Zoom webinars, but not me. I'm a dog trainer. I don't have a lot of experience with Zoom webinars because dogs don't do Zoom. Anyway, so I learned a lot about the webinar, and I have to say what I liked the best about being at home and doing that, actually I came to church to attend because I get interrupted at home. And so I attended our annual conference from our fellowship room. And during the annual conference, when we had potty breaks, 15-minute potty breaks, I was able to go to the bathroom and come back, and I had a much more comfortable chair. So thank you so much for letting me attend from distance. I really actually like that. Another thing is on the report side, when people were giving reports and it came up on the screen, I got to see where all these different churches, and it was really beautiful. And normally that doesn't happen. Normally you just hear statement after statement after statement, and it's a talking head like you're seeing now. Sorry. Anyway, so the big thing that people ask me what happened at annual conference is, of course, what normally happens, that happened. We had voting, we had resolutions and all that sort of thing. You know, about 1/3, I would say, and this is just me off the top of my head, and I'm not a statistician, that's my sister, but that is about 1/3 of the time is about budget. And I am not a great budget person, but it was about budget, and the budget is continuing, and of course there's been a lot of adjustments because of how we do church now, because we do something different. And they gave me a label for how we used to do church, which I kind of liked. They call it gather and scatter. And so I thought, that's really kind of what we do. We gather together and then we scatter out and do stuff. Anyway, so I thought that was a good explanation of what we did. But the big thing that people really think about for annual conference too is, what are we doing? Because we have this delegation that we're sending off to general conference, and the delegation is talking about our LGBTQ whatever people. I just do the first four digits, the only ones I can remember, sorry. Sorry to those people who have that other experience. Anyway, that delegation did report back to us. They did tell us about the 4 petitions they are bringing, and I have that information if you are interested. But what happened, and our general conference is postponed another year because of COVID. So we know what they're going to do, and we know what we are sending them with, and I think it's a totally great thing. The last time that we sent anybody to general conference, if you remember, we reported back, they threw out the stuff we sent. So I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about that in this report, but if you are interested, I do have that information. You can always call me. I'll be happy to share, or look it up online. We have, of course, you can look up the whole conference online, and you could have watched it. So maybe you're just watching to see what I gathered from the conference, even though you had your own impression. The other thing that they talked about, which was new to me, which was the bishop had decided, our bishop, Grand Hagia, had decided that we needed to do something about race because of the Black Lives Matter movement and all the things that are going on. And so there was a wonderful discussion, and I mean it as a sharing discussion about race that he shared with us from the perspective of 4 different people on the and it's online too, and you can go see it. And the 4 different people talked about the experience they had in regards to race. And interestingly enough, my friend Liz is in charge of the committee of nominations, and they have not been filling the committee for race and religion. But of course, now they want it filled, because one of the things that came out of this discussion is not only did we have a meeting about what grace is and what that means, kind of continuing our LGBTQ conversation, but to include race in that, because, you know, God made us all, and he made us all in his image. He did not make a superior image. And I think that that's important for us to remember, that none of us is superior to anybody else. I mean, we might be held closer to God because of our own inclination to be close to God, but that doesn't mean that God cares for us any more than he cares for the next person. And so that came out of that discussion, but it was a really beautiful discussion, and people shared, and there's only four people who are doing this. So they had very different experiences and some really great advice. And I would really recommend that you look at it. They talked about theology a little bit, but most of it was about how we are together and how we should be. And so I just wanted to share that with you. That really struck me. And what came out of that, the discussion for our conference, is that we are going to do an audit about what they called anti-racism audit, an anti-racism audit. And we called, one of the things that is coming out too is that we called it for a deadline, so they're going to have to report back by a certain time. And this, apparently, I didn't even know this, but apparently this is a thing that is done, and that there are anti-racism audits that you can do. So they're going to try to find out what in our communities that we are doing is leading to racism or invites racism. And so we need to be aware of that. And so being aware, of course, is the first step to that. So in our community, it's very hard for us because we, I think, because we are mostly divided in terms of color, because our church primarily is of one group, and then we have churches that primarily are another group, and another group, and another group. You know, we have all these different churches with people coming with, you know, I teach ESL, and I have a group of students from the Korean church, for example, and so, and they all speak English just fine. I'm just telling you but they group together because that's where they feel comfortable. And I think that we are aware of that, but we need to make our connections. That's one of the things that why I really appreciate our Martin Luther King celebration and how we share that and how we participate in that. But anyway, those are the highlights I got from annual conference, the beautiful things. And you might say, what did I not like? And one of the things I didn't like is because literally almost every report had the song, "We Are the Church" in it. And the first time, that was fine. But the 40th time, I was a little tired of it. But anyway, thanks. Have a wonderful day. Bye.
Hi, I'm Michelle Kilikauskas, the current lay leader here at Ridgecrest United Methodist Church in Ridgecrest in the High Desert in California. And along with my friend Laura Miller, I was one of the delegates to the Cal-Pac annual conference that was held just a month ago or so. I'm here this morning to give you kind of an overview of how the conference went, and I also wanted to share a couple of thoughts with you about things that have stayed with me as I've thought about it over the last few weeks. So, historically, this conference is held at the University of Redlands in person. It's a beautiful campus, and I've really enjoyed being there in person. I personally found the group in-person worship very moving, you know, the big stone cathedral and all the people in there in the stained glass. And the music was just really wonderful, and obviously it was different this year. I think anybody who has been there in person would tell you that having it this year via Zoom conference was just not the same. But there is some upside to having it done virtually like we did it this year. And one of those upsides is that a lot of the material was developed ahead of time in various places throughout the conference. And so watching these videos as they were played during the conference kind of gave you a virtual tour of various places all throughout our conference, places that I will probably never get to see in person. So that made it a richer experience for me than actually being there in person has been in the past. The other big upside was that because it was all done via Zoom teleconferencing, it was all recorded. And the full-length sessions and each of the individual video pieces are available to you on the Cal-Pac UMC website, so that not only did Laura and I get to enjoy it, but the rest of you can, at your leisure, pick and choose what you want to see. So I'd like to walk you through some of the things that are available on the website for a few moments, and then I'd like to tell you about two things that have really stuck with me. So being the nerd girl that I am, I've got some visuals here for you. So all of the material from the annual conference is on the Cal-Pac website, which is www.calpacumc.org/AC2020 annual conference. And when you go to this page, you'll see that there's a big red banner that says Annual Conference 2020. And then underneath that, in big black letters, it says Resources. And there's a table that has 4 entries in it, and there's a plus sign. On the website, if you click on each of these plus signs, it will open up a listing of all the stuff that's available in that section. So if you go to the first one, which is Sessions, Recordings, what that gives you is a full recording of each of the business sessions. They call them plenary sessions in conference speak. And there's also one about from the commissioning and ordination service. One pro tip here. These are recordings of the full sessions. Each of these is 2-3 hours. And for plenary 1 and plenary 3, the first half hour is kind of gathering music and some slides to tell you about various things going on within the UMC, but it's like half hour of that. So if you want to zip through to about 30 minutes in is when the session actually starts. So here's where you'll see all of the business, all the voting, you'll hear all the back and forth. So if you're really interested in that, all you can stand will be on this side here. Okay. So if you go to the second, actually if you go down to the third item on that menu, it's worship. If you open this, there's a video clip and a downloadable program for each of the worship sessions over the 2 days. The opening worship session here was recorded at First Church of Honolulu. Beautiful segments of different styles of music and dance, and a visual tour of various islands represented by the congregation there at Honolulu First UMC. I really enjoyed that, and I think you'll like that too. The second one on here is the Young People's Conference statement and a period of 8 minutes and 46 seconds of silence in honor of George Floyd. I thought that was very moving, and I would encourage you to check that out. The next piece down here is a video and the program in honor of those UMC clergy and their spouses who have passed on in the last year, including our own Dr. Jane. You can see the video and download the program and the booklet from this one here. The next one down is a retirement service that was recorded at Holman UMC in Los Angeles. I really enjoyed the sermon. Was done by, appropriately, by a retired UMC pastor named Reverend James Lawson. As a young man, he was an organizer with Dr. King during the Civil Rights Movement. As a 90-something, he is still bringing it. I would really encourage you to look at that if you want to. I found it really moving. The next section down is called Publications in UMC Daily. Here's where you can download the materials that were available to the participants. And UMC Daily has a file for each of the 3 sessions. June 18th, was for clergy only. June 19th and 20th was for all of the delegates. And this UMC Daily section has a summary of the proceedings from each day. If you're interested in that, you can go to this section here. I'd like to come back to what was the second one in that table, and these are presentations. The first one here is a litany that was developed by the Council of Bishops in response to the Black Lives Matter movement. It's a little bit long, but I found it very valuable as a personal meditation, so I'd encourage you to check that out if you're interested. The next section down here I'd like to call your attention to is will take you to the part of the Cal-Pac website for the delegation that's going from our Cal-Pac conference to the larger church-wide general conference that was originally scheduled for this summer. So if you click on that, it will take you to their site, which has this big red banner at the top. And then if you scroll down a little bit, there's some information about each of the delegates. And then if you scroll down a little more, you'll come to this box of resources. And there are 5 videos here that were recorded by the delegation, and then also their written report. And as you probably are very aware, the topic of LGBTQ inclusion has been in the forefront of the conversation within the Cal-Pac, within the Western jurisdiction, and in the larger worldwide United Methodist Church. At the Cal-Pac conference last year, which is 2019, there was a delegation elected to represent Cal-Pac going to this conference to the general conference, where a major vote on the way forward for the global church was scheduled to take place. You may also know that because of the global pandemic and the travel restrictions, that general conference has been moved to next year, which will be the summer of 2021. God willing, we'll see how the pandemic plays out. But when this delegation was elected last year, they started working toward a vision for Cal-Pac with the larger conversation about LGBTQ inclusion in mind. As they began in their work, the world got a lot more complicated. We are now in the midst of a global pandemic, and we also have had a significant increase in civil unrest in the United States over racial inequality. So as the delegation was doing their work, they broadened their thinking to include all three of those topics. So as you look at the material that they have posted and the videos they've done, you'll see that their work is now addressing all three of those topics: LGBTQ inclusion, a faithful response to this global pandemic, and also social justice. So one of the things that they've done each year that I've been at the conference, I think is probably a regular thing, is a breakout session for small group conversations on a topic that is relevant to the larger theme of the conference that year. So the theme that was chosen for the Cal-Pac conference this year was "We Are the Church Transforming the World." So the topic of conversation that they chose for these breakout sessions is the Wesleyan understanding of grace. And for those of you who are longtime Methodists, this is kind of duh. But for me, as a relative newcomer to the Methodist community, this was very revelational for me. It was kind of an aha moment. So one of the things that is on the delegation's site is a video called Theological Grounding for Our Work, which I would highly encourage you to check out. Just as a side note, in this video, there's also a beautiful montage of scenes from all over the Cal-Pac conference that help to remind me of the diversity, not only in language, in worldview, in theology, but just desert to ocean to Polynesia, cities, rural. I thought it was very eye-opening. I would encourage you to check that out for yourself. Back to the conversations. There, as a lead-in to getting folks to participate in these conversations, they showed another video that was prepared by the delegation, and it was called Conversations About Grace. It's this the very last one here on their page. And in this video, several members of the delegation to the larger general conference talked about how the Wesleyan understanding of grace has informed their thinking and what they've done over the last year to prepare for the general conference next year, and what has led them to the theme that they've developed, the vision that they've developed for Cal-Pac, regardless of how the general conference comes out next year. And that is one table with room for all. And here's the graphic that they're using. I would really encourage you to look at those videos to hear what they have to say. Back to the idea of the Wesleyan understanding of grace. The idea is basically that there are three phases of grace, three stages of grace. The first stage is prevenient grace, God reaching out to us before we've even responded to him, constantly reaching out to us, because he chooses to, not because I'm anything special, but because God chooses to. The second stage is justifying grace, where God brings us into a saving relationship because we have chosen to respond. And then the third phase is sanctifying grace, where God works in us to transform us to become more Christ-like as we journey through our life. What really struck me about this concept is that it's God reaching out to me, not because I'm such a fabulous person or so righteous or whatever. God reaches out to me as his beloved because he chooses to. So what just hit me like a thunderbolt is that person that really annoys me, God's beloved. That person who has a point of view that I cannot fathom, God's beloved. Me when I am confused and really disheartened because it just seems too hard, God's beloved. We are all in this together, equally God's beloved. And the encouraging thing for me was that God never lets go of me. It's God reaching out to me, even when I'm not able to respond. And several of the people in the delegation commented about that. The challenging thing for me, though, was that other person over there that is altogether unlovely, in my opinion, they're God's beloved too. But God's on my side, right? Not so much. God is calling each of us, wanting to transform us more into the likeness of Christ. So that was the first idea that really stuck with me from the conference. The other idea was the reminder that social justice is a fundamental part of what it means to be Methodist. And I was reminded that one of the questions in the Methodist baptismal covenant goes like this. It says, do you accept the freedom and power God gives you to resist evil, injustice, and oppression in whatever forms they present themselves? So when the person being baptized and we as a congregation respond back, we do, we are affirming that our journey with God is just not about us and our personal relationship. It's about acting justly, seeking mercy, and walking humbly with God. That social justice is not just for someone with a special calling for that or somebody more righteous than me. It's a fundamental part of our Methodist calling. So I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to chat with you a little bit in this format. It's a little awkward, but until we are able to meet again, I'd like to invite you, and after that too, I would like to invite you to reach out if you have any questions. Here's my contact information. Here's my email, my last name @gmail.com, my phone number. If there is anything you're particularly interested in from the conference materials, I'm happy to help you find it on the page. If you'd like to talk with any more about any of these topics, I'd be more than happy to chat with you. And the thought I'd like to leave you with is that even though we are separated by distance and we're doing the social distancing thing, we got the masks and all of that, what binds us together is our Wesleyan understanding of grace. So know that you are God's beloved, and so's that other guy. And until we meet again, be safe.